That sounds, all right, great. All right, well, this meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are, so we have Peggy Cornett, Bruce Gatlin Austin, Kate Malik, Christine Putnam, Emma Andrews, and Abigail Wilson. Oh, and Dan Mahone. Hello, everybody. Hey. Did I get everybody? I think I did. And I'm just listing the members, right? I think that is true. All right. The public has the opportunity to access and participate in this meeting as posted on the Albemarle County calendar and on the meeting agenda, both of which are posted on the Albemarle County website. So welcome, everybody. Really great to see all of you, and thank you for being here. Let's see, we do have Nicole Jones as the attendee, but I just wanted to thank Scott Clark for being here today in Kim's stead. This is spring break. I hope she's off doing something fun with her family. But thank you so much, Scott, for being here and leading us on, or giving us an opportunity to get a staff update from you.
Good to see you all again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I couldn't be here, but I'm glad to help out.
Thank you so much. And so I would love to, let me see, I would love to do a round of introductions since we have two new members. I believe, Abigail, did you have an opportunity to introduce yourself to the full committee? I think you came as a guest last time, but now you are officially on the committee, and Dan Mahone is officially on now. So just welcome the two of you. And I think it would just be a great opportunity to do a little round of introductions and take the time to do that. And so I'll just go ahead and start with myself. So I'm Christine, and I guess it's been several years now that I've been serving on the committee. And my background is I'm retired middle school science teacher, and just really grateful to have the opportunity to work on this committee and try to bring forward some of the goals in the Biodiversity Action Plan. And my real interest is education. And so, so happy to be here. So I'll just pass it along. Kate, would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Kate Malik. I live up in North Albemarle in Earlysville. My interests really tend towards pollution reduction and climate change mitigation and human health and environmental health and all those wonderful things, which fit very nicely with a focus on biodiversity. Hello, everybody.
Thank you. Bruce, I'm just going to kind of go around the circle here.
My name's Bruce Gatling Austin. I'm a former school teacher, education coordinator, outreach coordinator. I teach, I educate. That's my background. I still do it. I don't do it in a classroom except on Zoom. And I want to do biodiversity education in the public school system.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Emma.
My name is Emma Andrews. I live in Scottsville, Virginia, and I live on a farm with goats, and I just love being in nature and working with nature, and we have a little garden, and I work as an intuitive and a medium, and I've been with NHC now for I think a little over a year. It's nice to meet you all.
You and Peggy.
Peggy Cornett, curator of plants at Monticello. I've worked at Monticello for 38 years, and I have background in botany and botanic garden management and horticulture and just a big interest in natural history and ecology and sustainability and all those things that we're talking about. And I've been on the committee for quite a while. So thanks. That's it. I'm from North Carolina. Let me put that in there. But we lost the other night. So
Thank you, Peggy. Dan, would you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Dan. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm broadcasting from my car right now. I'm retired. I was the Greenway green infrastructure guy for parks. Backgrounds, landscape architecture and environmental art. And my whole really strong interest is about placemaking and bringing people. It's sort of natural heritage and future cultural heritage that sort of is the core of much of the art I do and the professional work I've done in the past. And I have presented. I've been engaged with the committee for years, but it's really interesting to be on this side of the table, on the outside, speaking in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you have worn both of those shoes, you know, or both of those hats. I think it's going to be really, I think you have some insight to provide for us and help us with. So really glad that have joined us, and welcome.
Yeah, and I need to keep an eye on Scott Clark.
There you go.
We don't pay you enough for that. Not sure we ever did.
All right, thank you. And Abigail.
Hi, I'm Abigail Wilson and I live in Crozet. And I have been working in technology for the past 6 years, but I quit my job last year because it felt irresponsible not to put my time and effort towards the climate situation. And I decided that plants was the way I wanted to help with that. So I've been studying herbalism and permaculture and just started doing some work with an ecological restoration company, just to get lots of perspectives on the issue. I'm also really interested in that concept of future heritage and helping people just change the way that they relate to the land and sort of changing the trajectory of, you know, how many plants we're taking out of the ground versus how many we're putting in. I'm also from North Carolina, Peggy. Go Heels. We did beat Duke, even though we lost the championship. So there are still victories that are to be found.
are you from Carol? Are you in UNC grad?
I'm a UNC grad. My dad and my granddad both graduated from UNC Dental School. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, just south of Chapel Hill. So it was also like part of my general community. It was all the basketball games.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm from Southern Pines, but I went to
Oh,
Chapel
yeah.
Hill, and so yeah.
So nice. I'm so glad to have these connections.
I studied botany at Chapel Hill, botany back when it was an undergraduate program.
That was my dad's undergraduate degrry as well at UNC. What? We'll have to have the conversation later, but I'd love to connect with you on
class.
this. Yeah.
Famous professors when I was there, Radford and Bell, and you know, they wrote the flora of North and South Carolina, and they were my professors. It was unbelievable. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, do you mind giving just a little background? I feel like you have been there from the start of it all. And
Well, maybe not quite from the start. Yeah, I'm Scott Clark. I work in the Community Development Planning Department with Kim. I'm just your substitute staffer for today, but I was the staff liaison for the biodiversity work group that preceded this committee, and for the first, 8 or 9 years of this committee, before it unfortunately went inactive for a while after the recession. And not a lot was going on. But so while I'm kind of a generalist environmental and rural area planner, my main professional interest has always been in biodiversity conservation planning, which unfortunately is something we don't get as much time to do as we might like, but I'm still really interested in it. And I'm still doing things like going to the landscape ecology conference that's next week, still virtual, but so trying to stay current.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. Great to be in the same virtual room with all of you guys. So we are going to go ahead and review the agenda, and I hope that everybody got a chance to look at that. I guess I could share it, but did everybody get a chance to see the agenda? And if I could get, somebody could make a motion to approve it.
Could someone share it though? I
Oh, I see.
find it today and I saw it earlier. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
To
Oh, thank you.
approve it. I
Thank you.
moved to approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, all right, and then we're gonna go ahead and take a vote on that. Dan, do you approve? Just a yes or no?
Also, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Abigail,
Yes.
Emma,
Yes.
Peggy,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
and Kate.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. And then hopefully everybody had a chance to look at Kim's great minutes. And if I'd sent those out to you, I mean, they were sent out, Kim sent them out a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago. So if somebody could move to approve the minutes, if there are no changes to that.
I move to approve the minutes
Wonderful,
from March.
thank you.
I second.
Thank you very much. And I think that.
I
the
wasn't
vote on
attending.
that-
I'll have to abstain. So.
Right, so that's just going to be, I think Bruce, Kate, and Emma, you weren't here either, were you?
No, but I read the minutes.
You read the minutes. Okay, does that work?
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't think so.
Has to be attending and then
you have to
reviewing
attend.
and approving.
Confirm that what you heard was in the minutes.
Okay, Kate, do you approve?
Yes.
And Bruce, do you approve?
I approve.
Okay, well, and I approve. So
That works.
there we go. All right, well, the next thing on our agenda is that Emma has kindly offered to act as the vice chair. And so I hope that you're still up for that, Emma. And would somebody like to make a motion that Emma become the vice chair?
I make a motion that Emma should be approved as the vice chair.
Fantastic. In a second.
I second.
Wonderful. All right, Dan, do you approve?
I approve.
Abigail,
I approve.
I hope you approve of this, Emma.
Yeah.
And Peggy
Yes.
and Bruce
I approve.
and Kate.
Yes.
Hooray. Emma, you are our new vice chair. Thank you so much for stepping forward to do that.
Congratulations, Emma.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yay. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. We are going to, and so there's also this, I think I've served for more than 2 years as the chair. And I think Lonnie had offered at some point to step up as the chair. So we will definitely need to look at that for further discussion in our next few meetings. So does anybody have anything to report concerning the important site updates or outreach? Oh, yes, Abigail.
Yeah, Leah had asked me to meet up with David Mitchell about the bald eagle nest. And so we've been in contact, and I'm heading out there next week to take a look. This is my first time doing this. So I assume all I need to do is make note of the current state of the site, anything I see there. Is there anything specific you want me to look for?
Yeah, and what I will do, Abigail, is perhaps maybe we could even chat on the phone, because there are these folders in the Google Drive. And
Mhm.
so hopefully there is a folder that's set up for that particular site, and a place for you to take notes. And if you take any pictures, you can upload the pictures in that in
Okay.
that folder as well.
Yeah,
Is
Leah
it?
sent me a document to update. So
Which site is it? There's
it's
several.
the bald eagle nest on, I think the road is Fair Hill. It's out here
Yeah,
towards
it's the one by
just
Licking
off-
Hole Basin.
Licking Hole, okay, yeah. Yeah, that's a famous one.
Oh, wonderful. And I would do is I would go to the NHC Google Drive, and then go to the important sites folders, and you should be able to, I don't know if you've done it already, but the Licking Hole Basin important site should be there. And then you can also, it'd be nice, you can see if there are any other notes or from prior visits, and you can sort of see what has been documented about it so far.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
when you're done, and then, yeah, maybe you could just, you can, if you have any questions, you can get in touch with me, or we can chat about it. And then with any
Okay.
information you have, you'd stick in that folder. And then we'll look forward to hearing your update at our May
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Leah said she heard there's already an egg in the nest, so hopefully it's
Well,
still
they should
there.
be
Or
fledged.
there's a bird.
Yeah, there should
Yeah.
be birds now. I mean, they'll be
Yeah.
fledged by next month. Yeah,
Wow.
they hatch in the winter. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. They start mating in January, and
Yeah.
they got to get an early start.
Oh, fantastic. All right. I'm so glad you're doing that. Does anybody else have anything else to add? All right, great. Thank you. And then the next thing on the list is we did have communications with the Board of Supervisors, one on the synthetic turf proposal. And I just want to thank Kate for drafting that excellent letter that she drafted. And I did hear back a thank you from Ann Malik, and but I did not get any other replies from that letter. So, but I followed up again, and Donna Price did respond that she had read the email and the information there. And I listened to, on March 23rd, I listened to like 3.5-hour presentation by the turf consultants, and also the board heard a presentation from the Albemarle High School athletic director, and Bob Krickenberger from Parks and Rec, just with their experience with artificial turf. But unfortunately, from my perspective, like the issue of climate change was never brought up or never discussed. And I think at this point, I'm not sure exactly where the board is with that. I don't know if Scott, you have any information. I think that the idea was there was going to be another meeting, a work session. And I did see that now there's, in the budget, there's just a line item of athletic fields. So I feel like the Biscuit Run athletic fields and the Darden Tower, it's all been grouped together, which makes sense to me, because I think that it's important, since some of those decisions about the synthetic fields at Darden Tower were made before Biscuit Run came online, that they can look at it a little bit more holistically. And Kate, I don't know if you have something that you would like to add or more information.
Oh, just regarding what you just said about them being lumped together, I agree that it's good if they be looked at holistically. Any prior information was simply before more was known. You know, people were not directly linking plastic to climate change 7, 8, 10 years ago. Yet you have plastic degrading in the environment, you're releasing methane, and that's 20 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. So there are so many considerations, and I just hope that the process will garner all the information. Making decisions without cost comparisons, making decisions without all the information actually on the table from experts on the field, that would be important. I know they've heard from industry representatives and experts on synthetic turf. I hope they will take the time to learn from experts who maintain grass and who install really well-managed rainout-proof grass fields. It's time to hear from those folks about what's realistically possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So
Are they also talking about lighting in these athletic fields?
That issue exists. People who have followed Darden Tow over the years understand that when that park was created, there was an agreement with the neighbors that lighting above and beyond security lighting and low parking lighting would never be put there. It legally can be by agreement of the different boards and council, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a very rural park and agreement was made with the neighbors prior to the park being established at all. So I do hope that those agreements will be mindfully considered over time. You know, light pollution is a very real thing that affects a whole lot, as we know, affects a whole lot of species. I don't know that I've ever shared that I actually got to see a burying beetle here on our property, taking a dead mouse off a stump and taking it to go lay its eggs. And that may not be like people I tell this think, ooh, that's gross. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen, to watch an endangered burying beetle take this body that was 50 times its size and take it off to bury it. And one of the most significant issues for the burying beetle is light pollution. So anyway, that's my little endangered species story.
Yeah. And I just want to encourage all of you. I think that if you have the time and the inclination to write a personal email to your board representative, if this is something that you are concerned about, that we cannot have enough voices out there expressing their concern. And so I plan to do that myself again. And I think it is important. You know, these are things that we care about. So that one of the things that we did learn is these alternative to the crumb rubber is the idea of using a product called rockfill, which is made with, I believe, southern yellow pine or some type of pine. It's basically like a pine mulch, but there were some interesting claims made about it, that it would never deteriorate, but I've never seen a pine. I don't know. That's a little bit of a red flag to me. Just make that statement about any organic material. But
Yeah.
They all compact and deteriorate, but there are lots of infill options, that just being one of them, all of which come with differing price tags. And I think every single one that is not tires is $50, $100, $150,000 more once you get into anything. So the options may exist, but whether a locality is going to take that on with the extended price tag is, and that's just one part of that's just one part of the field. That's just the infill. And you still have the plastic and the PFAS from the blades of grass that aren't going anywhere no matter what, except home with you on your clothes.
And they, like, I just went to the website and they recommend using this shock pad that's made of polypropylene underneath it. So it's basically covering, quite a expansive space. If you look at the maps of Darden Tow and what they want to cover with this polypropylene shock pad and then the artificial grass on top of it. So
I think you have to actually with some of the alternative infills related to the GMAX forces that reduce they have concussion testing related to the force with which a body would hit the surface. And if it doesn't meet certain requirements, it also needs that padding underneath. And an interesting note about the original Darden Tow turf field plan, It's being talked about, or I've seen reference to it as 4 fields. It's 2 fields. It's 2 adult-sized fields. And the only time it became 4 was when someone decided to talk about it as if children were using it sideways. Like when you take a full-size field and you use it for 2 small kid games sideways, that doesn't make 2 fields into 4. Just so that's just a little note if anybody notices that in current materials. It was only ever 2 fields. And now, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, that's just an aside that annoyed me.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And I really hope, I mean, there was one of the supervisors suggested that maybe Biscuit Run would be a better place for the lighting and for the synthetic turf. So I hope that that's not a battle that has to be fought. So that is the update on the synthetic turf proposal. And then I wrote a letter just encouraging funding for the ACE program. And Scott, if you have anything to add, I did not listen to the work session on that. So I don't know.
There hasn't been a lot yet. So just to bring everybody up to speed for those who may not be familiar with it, back around 2000, 2001, the county started, after several years of research and preparation, started what's called the ACE program, which stands for Acquisition of Conservation Easements. And it's a purchase of development rights program. So we buy conservation easements on farmland in the county. And it's a program that's specifically designed to benefit people who are land rich and cash poor. They don't have very much income, but they have high value farmland that's worth protecting. And so over the years, the county has dedicated some funding to that program, which has varied quite a bit over the years. That program's been underway for over 20 years now. We recently, unfortunately, lost the longtime coordinator of that program, Ches Goodall, to retirement. So he's no longer with the county. So earlier this year, I think it was, the board decided to put that program on hold temporarily and review it, and review its history and what it's done, and decide whether to continue or modify it or whatever. So not a lot has actually changed since that point of the board deciding to pause the program. They've asked us to come back with a presentation in June 15th, where we will do a retrospective analysis of how the program has worked and what it's done over those 20 years. I don't have any news, and I don't really expect to get any news before that June meeting about when the program might be reactivated, what the funding situation would be. Right now, there's, I think the program has something like $76,000 in carryover money from previous years. So it's not very much for a program that has been funded up to as much as, $1.5 million in certain years. So until we get some direction from the board at that June meeting about next steps, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of detail about what's going to happen with the program or when it might be reactivated. So we're all kind of waiting to hear.
And Scott, is there any indication of what changes or updates would be included? Or we don't know?
No, we don't really know. And that's, again, we're waiting for some sort of direction from the board. And we're trying to make sure we understand, there's so many aspects of a program like this that you can analyze. And we're trying to make sure we really understand what it is they want to hear so that we can do a good job with the presentation and then get some clear direction. The ACE program and all of our land conservation programs are probably going to be looked at and reviewed and evaluated during the comprehensive plan review, which is supposed to start right after that, or at least the stage of the comp plan review that would apply is supposed to start about 2 weeks after that June presentation. So I have no idea really if the board intends to reactivate the program in the meantime, which as you all know, there's nothing in the budget this year. So most likely at a guess, it would probably be next year at the earliest before they would have us go back and start doing funding requests again for that. But I don't really know for sure. Whether or not the board asks us to reactivate the existing program, we're still going to evaluate it and the other programs during the comp plan review so that, say there are new conservation goals that come up in the comp plan review, went to those programs to adapt and pull those in. So hopefully that'll take a couple of years, as will the whole comp plan review. But hopefully that'll kind of help us to modernize our programs a bit and make them more sensitive to these conservation goals.
So that would really be the hope, to be able to use as a tool for stream health or maybe even climate action.
Right, and
protection.
Right, and at this point, we can speculate, but we don't really know that. Would we modify ACE, or would we keep ACE to do what it does, which is largely farmland preservation, and then start some other programs? We're all speculating and trying to figure out what to put in this upcoming review, but it's kind of early to know what's going to come out of it.
Yeah. Will there be the opportunity to create more of a vision or offer possibilities of what this program could do in terms of, we already have the biodiversity action plan where we've really, the ACE program has been identified as a tool. And so I hope that to remind the board that that's already in, these planning documents.
Oh, definitely. I mean, any recent policy update to the comp plan, like the biodiversity action plan, is going to be taken into account. But also typically when we go through into these large comp plan reviews, we consult with the various advisory and technical committees like this one and others, so that people can see the draft whole we're working on them, or at least provide input on them. And then of course, there's going to be a general public review process. I'm not an expert on this part. I think we're going to be gathering staff input and committee input, things like that, try to come up with a base draft and then present that to the public for further revisions, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
That's often how it works. So there would be multiple points where you all would have a chance to give input on what's proposed.
Scott, do you know offhand, does an entire staff position need to also be in the budget, or is most of the budget really just programmatic funds? Does this kind of fit in someone's job description who already exists as a part of a job description?
You mean for the ACE program?
Yes.
Right. The ACE coordinator position has been a half-time job for the whole life of the program. That position's sitting there unfilled at the moment.
Right.
I honestly have no idea when that's going to change. I assume it's not going to change until after the board gives us direction. They see this 20-year review of the program and decide, how and if and when they want to reactivate things and get it going again, then they would need to fill that position. I will say that overall, and I've reported on this to the easement authority and planning commission members and others. We are significantly understaffed for an easement holding organization. I did a report several years back where if you look at the conservation easement holders of similar sizes, and we hold 193 easements, I think, something like that in the county, almost 30,000 acres, which is a pretty good size for a local or regional conservation organization. Typically, an organization with that much land under conservation would have, 3 or 4 staffers plus some fundraising people. Now, technically, we don't need the fundraising people because we're not a nonprofit, but we had Chas, who is half-time, and we have, a quarter to a half of my time to run the donated easement program, which is a separate one. That's not enough. We really ought to have a couple of people for field monitoring and enforcement, and at least one total position for the new easement intake to be comparable to how you would think a land trust would work. But we're nowhere close to having that now.
And Scott, is the Justice property part of that? Is that easement held by Albemarle?
That was a donated easement. So just to clarify, we have basically 3 easement programs to the county. There's ACE, which is the purchased easements. That again is, the purchase is prorated on income. So the money is targeted toward people with not a lot of income, but that have land to protect. Then we do donated conservation easements for the people who are able to do that. And the third is what are called rural preservation developments, which is an odd name, but they're clustered subdivisions where you take a subdivision that would be broken up into small and large development lots, and all of the land would be in development lots. But the alternative form is to cluster all but one of those lots together, and then you have one residue piece that goes under a conservation easement. Those are called preservation tracts, and that's just you don't really change the overall amount of development, but it just compresses the actually developed area and keeps some area available for conservation or agriculture or whatever might be appropriate. So those are the 3 kinds of easements we have that we have to, do the intake, do all the management while we hold them. We have to do field monitoring to ensure that the terms are adhered to and all that.
Is there a document that lays out, when you say it's a conservation easement, I mean, just thinking about some of the properties, what does that entail? What is it asking of the landowner?
Each property that's under a conservation easement is subject to a deed of easement. So it's a 10 to 20 page legal document that goes into pretty specific detail about what you can and can't do on the property. But they're not all the same.
And how does one look at those documents? Is that
They're all recorded at the courthouse. That until that happens, they're not official. But once both parties sign them and they're reported at the courthouse, then they go into effect. And so anybody can see them by asking for access at the courthouse. If there's a particular property, especially if it's one of our easements that you're interested in, I can always find it for you. Just because we have web access to the courthouse records and can easily pull them up.
Yeah.
So again, they vary a lot in their terms based on who holds them. There's lots of different organizations that do this, what their priorities are, what the specifics of the property are. So most of the ACE easements are pretty similar. The RPD easements, those preservation tracts, are all pretty similar to each other. The donated easements vary a lot because the properties vary a lot. We have historic preservation or scenic view easements on 9 and 10 acre properties, and lots of stuff in the 50 to 200 range. And then there's things like Justice, it's 4,000 acres. It's just a whole different thing. But they all are in that same basic format of a deed that lays out the restrictions that apply, that gives the holding organization the right to enforce those terms.
and
I apologize for my ignorance on this, but are these terms generally just related to development, or do they also have to do with landscaping or plantings, land management, access, that kind of thing?
They can be any and all of those things. And again, it kind of depends on, there's lots of different things you can do within the basic form of a conservation easement. And yes, some of them are just, you can only have 3 houses and you can't subdivide, and you have to manage the resources responsibly. They're pretty basic. They're more complicated than that, but that's what they come down to. Depending on the holding organization, you get some that are clearly intended to be farm preservation easements that do very little in terms of regulating land management. They're more, as you say, about development. Others can be very specific about habitat protection or forest or riparian buffer protection, things like that. It really depends on the intent of the landowner and the holding organization.
So they're all designed specifically out of a discourse from a specific landowner and the organization. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and more so with the donated easements than with something out of a program like ACE that's fairly consistent. They tend to be more alike.
Is it possible if for when the county does get those donated easements that really ways to incorporate more conservation into, so we don't end up with situations like the one I spoke to you earlier about, where you've
Yeah.
got a bunch of bare land and not a whole lot of zero life on land.
Yeah, and it's all in how you design the terms of the easement, but it's also dependent on what the landowner is willing to do
Mhm.
and what the easement holder wants. I tend to probably bias, when I see a piece of land that has some significant habitat value on it, I get really excited and I start writing proposed term. I negotiate the terms out with the landowners and saying, hey, we could do this and this. And sometimes they say, that sounds great. That's what we really care about. And others say, look, we just want to be able to farm this. We don't want to do that stuff. And also, the easement authority, a lot of their focus, for example, for not all of the members, but some of them would prefer that we stick more toward the more farm style easements. And so sometimes they'll say, Scott, you've gone too far toward this habitat stuff. And we see this more as a farm or estate property. So there's just so many variables and so many human factors in what ends up getting protected on any particular property. It's a lot more regular with something like ACE, where you've got a set deed and a set list of expectations in an ordinance that you have to follow.
Is the easement authority citizen appointed, or are they made up of, is it appointed by the board?
It's
Or-
appointed by the board. It's funny, it's an authority, so it's technically a separate unit of government. Like you all and many of our other committees are technical or advisory committees appointed by the board for the board, and so you're part of the county operation. The easement authority is technically a separate body, but since it's entirely appointed by the board, obviously there's a lot of control there. And I will say, I do not mean to make it say like make it sound like the easement authority's program is not sensitive to conservation needs. Their acceptance criteria very closely follows the county's comprehensive plan. And so there's a lot in there about water resource protection and habitat protection. Those are always options. It's just that every individual easement varies in its goals.
All right. Well, thank you. That's helpful to me to have a better understanding of how it all comes together, works.
Yeah, it's interesting. People can look at a map and say, oh, look at all those easements that are green on the map. It's protected. Like, well, it's protected. Every one of them is protected a little differently and does different things. And, I get calls from people occasionally like, so-and-so's property's under easement. He's cutting his trees down. He can't do that. Well, you go read the deed on that one. He can't, because it's not a don't cut the trees kind of easement. It's a keep this land intact so you can do farming and forestry kind of easement. They're all over the place.
And when we say
they're all for valid goals.
And when we say farming, that could be just cutting hay off that land. And there would be like a certain expectation that income would be realized from the cutting of that hay, or is it?
No, you may be thinking of some of the requirements of the agricultural land use tax program. Generally speaking, easements most of them don't require activities. They prohibit things. So they might say you can't cut this forest down, and it must remain as native hardwood forest, and go into a lot of details about that. But it's not likely to say you have to plant such and such, or you have to put cattle on this pasture.
So,
They rarely, if ever, mandate an activity.
so it just has to look like it's a farm. I mean, just essentially, so if you just had like, you could put your houses there and then have like big expanses of grass, and that would be fine.
Depending on the easement,
Yeah, okay.
but it would be rare. An easement will say you can do agriculture, you can do forestry, and you can do certain very limited commercial uses, but it would never say you must graze cattle on this property.
I see. That's helpful to understand that.
Yeah. And the tax program, the use value taxation program in the county is different. That's not a conservation program. That's a reduced tax program for people who are doing valid rural uses. And we don't want to tax them off the land by taxing them at the full residential rate. So they need to show, for example, as you probably heard, you have to produce a certain amount of agricultural products to a given value to stay in the ag tax category. Or the people in the forestry tax category have to have an active forest management plan.
Technically on paper, right? And it just has to be enforced.
It does have to be enforced. And are there some people who maybe have a forest management plan and don't really intend to cut their trees? That's possible.
Yeah.
You can't really just do it on paper for the ag program. And I'm getting way out of my expertise here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you actually have to show receipts that you've produced a certain amount, whether it's cattle or hay or whatever it is, bees.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And does anybody else have any questions about that? No. And then the third letter that was sent was on stream health, and that was Lonnie had written that letter, and that was for the, oh my gosh. The idea there was to be able to have enforcement of the stream buffer and the overlay district. And so, but I did not hear back on either the ACE letter or the stream health. So there was no feedback on that, but hopefully that was heard.
And I can just add there, I was going to say this during the staff update, but it's probably better here. One of the things that Kim asked me to update you all about was that the board has approved a resolution of intent to amend the stream buffer requirements in the water protection ordinance. And so Kim and Frank Pohl, our county engineer, and others will be very soon diving into actually coming up with a proposed revised version of those buffer requirements. So that is underway.
Fantastic. All
Would
right.
that be, is that one of those things that would just kick in if there were a change to a situation, or if there were like development underway?
Honestly, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I'm not part of that team, but I'm guessing not. This is purely a guess, because right now the way the water protection ordinance works is just as you say, those buffer requirements kick in if there's development. I'm guessing at least that there'll be some measure of expectation of vegetation protection, despite whether there's development or not.
That's wonderful. Fabulous.
But that's speculation on my part, but I hope it does.
Me too. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. And Kenan had emailed me today. He wasn't able to join the meeting, but one thing that's interesting and exciting is that he's been in conversation with some people at UVA about the possibility of helping doing some imaging. I think, Kate, that was a discussion that had come up at the policy group. Is there a way to use imaging to be able to track changes in those along those buffers? So I don't know any of the details, but it sounds like there's some conversations being had about a partnership and utilizing expertise of either students at UVA. So that would be great. All right. Okay, Scott, we are now at the staff update, which you probably shared a bunch of information with us already.
I'm trying to see if I have anything left to update you about. So we talked about the ACE program. We talked about stream health. And let's see. Yeah, three things that Kim had mentioned to me. One was the stream health update. So that is underway, as I mentioned, for the potential revisions to the stream buffer portion of the water protection ordinance for the board's consideration. Kim had mentioned that a lot of you all were interested in knowing when we would be back to in-person community meetings. And we don't know yet exactly. Yesterday was the very first time that we were back to in-person meetings with the board. So the board and the planning commission are first. And that was kind of a culture shock being back live last night after 2 years of not doing that. But I think it went well. The committees and advisory groups will be phased in gradually, but I don't really have a schedule for when that will be. So board first, then planning commission, then the committee level groups over time. And I'm guessing by the time we all meet next month, we'll have a better answer.
Have you heard anything so far about hybrid options being retained for people who might, need them?
I have not heard anything about that. I mean, we did hybrid meeting for the board.
I can comment on that.
Oh, hey, great.
I can throw a little in. Hybrid is for like the board, the planning commission, the architectural review board. Meetings like your all, I don't know if they're going to be able to be hybrid because you don't meet at the county building, do you?
Well, we did in the past.
Used to.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it's possible, but don't hold me on that. And they're thinking that maybe in June that the ARB will go back to hybrid. So we need to get through April and May with the board and the planning commission before they really move forward with anything at this point, just to see how these go first. And then the ARB will be next, and I'm not sure what other ones will be on that same track. But not sure what the plan is as far as hybrid goes for meetings like this.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, the next thing on the agenda is the solar conditions for approval, and just I saw in the news that the Midway, the property off of 53 had been approved for the solar field, and just wondering, Kim thought maybe you could give us an update for like what conditions were laid out for the approval of that site, and going forward, what they will be. Oh, I think you're muted. You're muted.
I'm terrible at that. I'm sorry. I had the approval letter for Midway open until a second ago, and I somehow closed it. So give me just a second here. I'll get that open again. While I'm doing that, I can, here we go, found it. The Midway solar facility is actually in the Batesville area, south of Batesville on Craig Store Road. And that's the one I can share the conditions of approval on. Yeah, the one, Christine, the one you're thinking of on 53 is Ravenna Solar.
Okay.
That one should also be underway soon. That was the first one we had approved. Midway was the second one, and the third one we had was the one on the cap of the landfill.
Yeah.
On Dick Woods Road. So that was kind of an entirely different sort of project. But before I go into the conditions that were applied to Midway Solar, and which relates to how do we regulate solar in Albemarle, and how might we make more detailed regulations in the future based on what we have addressed in these conditions. One thing I just wanted to mention for anybody who hasn't heard about it is the state Department of Environmental Quality has recently issued a memo to all of the solar developers saying that from now on, any project that is in design will have to treat the solar panels themselves as completely impervious surfaces for the purposes of stormwater regulation.
Mhm.
And that's been kind of up in the air for a long time because obviously the panels don't sit on the ground, they stand on posts, and most of what's under them is open ground. The rain may not fall directly on it, but it's available to some degree for infiltration. So there was always a lot of variation in how places dealt with stormwater regulation for solar facilities. So that's all been cleared up now. What it means, though, is that the solar developers, including people who are right now in the middle of their design processes, are going to have to treat, they're probably going to have to change the designs they're doing because they're going to have a lot more stormwater requirements, which is a good thing for downstream water quality. Not really
How
sure
many
yet.
acres? Sorry, how many acres do these solar fields are they comprised of? Yeah.
They vary a lot. I'm going to be terrible at remembering exact numbers, but Ravenna sold, the one on 53, was on the order of 90 acres. I think Midway was maybe a couple hundred. The one on the landfill is only about 15. So there isn't really a upper or lower limit on what they might propose. It's just a matter of the access to the power system, substations, and the available land. But now they're going to, any given site is going to accommodate fewer panels because they're going to have to give more area over to stormwater management. So, let's see here, where is, let's see if I can just show you all, just for context here. Sorry to do this in front of you.
That's it.
All right, here we go. It's not the right one. Oh, here we go. So this is all part of the submittal packet. It's very strange. Where's the right sheet? Ah, here we go. Alrighty, so this is what the conceptual plan for one of these facilities can look like. This is obviously zoomed way out. So you've got the property. In this case, this is the Midway solar property. Craig Store Road is on this side, which is the connection from Batesville down to Nelson County. The river's over on this side. And all these little lines you see here are the planned solar panels. So again, this is on the order of a couple hundred acres. And you'll see they've got these gray areas for the critical slopes that they're staying out of. And then the flatter areas of the property where the panels would go. So that's basically what a conceptual plan showing the layout look like. But the reason I wanted to show that is whenever there's a special use permit, in almost every case, when you look at the conditions that apply to that permit that set the limitations, condition one will be you have to develop it according to that plan you showed us. So it's not a free for all. Once the design is set, then it has to be developed according to that design. And we typically identify major elements that are important. In this case, location of solar envelopes, locations of the equipment yard, and retention of wooded vegetation and stream buffers. So those are major design features that you can't vary from without coming back and redoing your whole plan.
And how large are those buffers, the tree buffers? Like, is that dictated?
Well, there's, in most places in the county, the water protection ordinance sets a 100-foot buffer, but with a legislative act like a special use permit, you can actually design it to have more than that. So for example, if staff identifies or the developers identify, they know this in advance, that if they've got a large area of wooded critical slips next to a river, they can't really use that for the solar facility. So it's to their benefit to identify that as a conservation area that's not to be changed. So you could potentially get, hundreds of feet of wooded buffer where that exists along a river. It just depends on the proposal. But certainly the minimum of the water protection ordinance is going to apply. So, and I did not work on this one, but I'm kind of familiar with it, but here's what the conditions covers. The first one is sticking to the plan and establishing those major design elements. Condition 2 is about landscaping and screening. This obviously is a concern to anybody who lives next to these things. They don't want to look at it all the time. And so landscaping and screening will be shown as part of that conceptual plan. The setbacks for inverters and panels, especially with the inverters, the concern there is noise and also to some degree visibility. But the inverters that convert the DC from the panels into AC that you can send out into the grid, make a little bit of noise. They're kind of like a refrigerator or air conditioner or something. So generally you'd have to set those back. One of the really interesting things to me about solar facilities are these conditions you'll see about decommissioning plans. A lot of the argument that the solar industry has made is, we want to do solar on a site for say 30 to 50 years. And when we're done, you can farm it again. It's not like a coal plant or something where it becomes a toxic site and you can never use it. So the way some localities, including ours, have responded to that is, okay, we'll do it. So we mandate that by condition that they and not the community, the operators and not the community are responsible to make sure that when they're done with the site, that they come in and remove the panels, the posts, the equipment, all that stuff. Obviously, there's some impacts. It's not going to be unchanged. But theoretically, if you do the decommissioning right, the site is back to the point where you could farm it again or do other
Can I
rural
ask
activities.
a question too about, is there anything in this about how, I guess my concern, and you envision these things going in a otherwise an open farm land, but is there anything in there that says, you can't cut down an oak forest to build a solar farm? Or can anyone do it on any piece of property? Or,
Well, and this is, I probably should have started with this. So thank you, Peggy, for raising this. Several years ago, the county decided to permit these facilities by special use permit, but didn't establish specific design criteria otherwise. They just said, you can apply to do these, and it'll be subject to all the requirements that any special use permit is. So basically that means looking at impacts on neighboring properties and looking at factors that are identified in the comp plan, which includes water quality, biodiversity, wooded area protection, all those things. But we don't have specific requirements that say you can't cut down any hardwood forest or you must not develop on a certain grade of agricultural soils or anything like that. Every one of them is analyzed on its own. That may change, but that's where we are right now. And we talk about that with the applicants before they ever apply and let them know what our concerns are. So, for example, Rivanna Solar, the first one that we did, was approved on a site that had been logged and then replanted in pines in every course way 3 or 4 years before the application ever came in. So that was a site that was already heavily disturbed before they even planned a solar facility there. If that same site had come in and it had been mostly hardwood forest, I think that review would have gone very differently.
Yeah, that's,
So,
oh, yeah, yeah. Because that is a
And-
concern,
yeah,
because
it is, definitely.
they're not pretty, the solar farms, but anyway,
No, they're not.
they're a good thing, but, yeah.
Has there been anything to your knowledge, Scott, in the decommissioning information about what's being done with the panels themselves, or would, I mean, obviously, an owner of one of these facilities, would they have any requirement for managing the components of these panels or anything like that?
It's an interesting question because, and you'll see here in, what's it, condition 4G, that they're supposed to address recyclability as part of the decommissioning plan. But in a way, I'm always kind of confused about the legalities of this, because our ability to regulate land uses has to do with what happens on that site and its impacts on the surrounding area. And that's where the county's authority to do land use regulation is rooted. I don't really understand, and I need to learn more about this, to what degree we have the legal authority to require someone to recycle the materials once they're off that site. I don't know if we can legally, I don't know if we can do that or not. If somebody tore their house down, we don't have any ability to say, okay, now here's where the demolished materials have to go. Now we can say you can't dump them in the creek, but we don't really say you have to send it to a recycling facility and not to a landfill. So I wish I had a better answer, but I don't know that we have the authority to direct the fate of the materials once they leave the site.
It would seem if a plan was being created and submitted, that part of the plan would have to be the most responsible management of the materials. If that's potentially part of a plan, why should someone get to make money off a solar farm for however many years if they're just gonna, not manage their pieces? But I appreciate the info very much.
Yeah, and this is all very new. This is new to everybody. Somewhat new to the developers. It's new to all the localities who are dealing with it. I don't know. I probably won't be here anymore when we get to the point of decommissioning the first facility. So I won't see how this turns out. But on the one hand, I feel good that we haven't just taken everybody's word for it, and we're actually requiring the decommissioning and the removal. On the other hand, as to how exactly that's going to work, I don't know.
Scott, out of curiosity, in the discussions for these agreements, are you ever talking about allowing multi-use on these sites, like doing grassland restoration or even livestock grazing underneath the panels? I don't know if there are any precedents for that.
Yeah, well, there are. And, we've only had a experience with 3 of these facilities so far. And one of those is on a landfill, so there's really no opportunity there. We have always talked to the applicants about that, but the situation is evolving very quickly. As far as multiple uses go, they're required to fence these facilities out for insurance purposes and things like that. So my impression is that they have a hard time accommodating grazing around the panels because of concerns about damage to the equipment. But we always talk to them about it. We've also talked to them about, what can we do about the vegetation under and around the panels within that fence? And really tried, especially with that first one with Ravenna Solar, to establish some sort of planting plan that would be, that would set a requirement that they do native plantings, whether it was grassland plants or focusing on pollinators or whatever it might be. And the issue at that point was they said, we'd love to go along with this, but we're worried that we won't be able to comply, that they couldn't find, over a span of 90 acres, they couldn't be sure of being able to get enough plants and be able to maintain them, and be sure that they would stay. So if we mandate you must have, pollinator friendly species, native species on the site, and they turns out that they can't keep them alive, then their whole facility comes out of compliance with a special use permit, and they've got an enforcement problem. So
Yeah, the
Sounds like a
ones-
red herring to me.
They have to mow, they have to just keep them mowed and groomed to
Yeah.
be able to keep things, and they're not high enough to have any kind of grazing animal underneath them. And yeah,
You
they're
can
just
make them
right.
high. There are plenty of
The
people, there are
desert.
people who grow vegetables underneath them. They can
Or
be-
herbs are another great option. A lot of perennial herbs can fit.
yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like if 20 or 30 years of this land being in a relatively stable but untrafficked position, like that's just a great opportunities for some really deep restoration work with plant communities that are there. I wonder if there are some other partners in our community that we could bring in perhaps to help with enforcement who understand budgetary concerns. Because yeah, that I would just love to see that happen, to see it be a beneficial thing over decades.
It would be nice.
And that, I will say I've worked with, in 20 plus years of the county, I've worked with a lot of applicants who just don't care about the county standards, or are going to do the minimum they have to do to get their project going. My impression so far is that the solar developers, if for nothing else, they want to be able to do the right thing because it looks good for them. It helps them get their projects approved. And honestly, some of the engineers I've worked with are people who seem to actually care about site vegetation and things like that. So I think the county needs to learn, and to some degree, the developers need to learn what's actually possible, so that we can set them up so that rather than just saying, here's what we, the county, want you to do, is make sure that everybody knows we've come up with a design that will actually work on the site. And that's just something that we all need to get better at and learn more about. And if we were to change from this approach of having individual sets of conditions for every project to having much more detailed supplemental regulations that apply to every one of these facilities, then I would think that one aspect of that would be talking to you all and any professionals in the committee about how can we come up with design standards for vegetating the sites that will succeed. That will be a really a healthy plant community that will persist for the 20 or 30 or 40 years of this facility being there.
Yeah, I just imagine Japanese Lespedeza taking over, and
Yeah, hopefully not.
yeah, it's just
So, again, I realize this is not an ideal answer, and all of
Yeah.
us would like to get a better answer, but we're all trying to run to catch up here.
A lot of the prairie type meadows, there's burning involved. You wouldn't want to.
Yeah, but I
Light
can
up.
see how burning initially might actually be beneficial for the installation of the solar panels. If you burned before you had to put all that in, you could really clear out a lot of vegetation. So I think there are ways you could talk about that. Mowing is an alternative to fire also. Yeah, I think you could spin that in a way that works for everybody.
Yeah, but Piedmont Prairie would be good. Yeah.
I'd love to see that. That would be great. That's that would be the ideal thing. Oops, sorry, dog.
Yeah, so like I say, I realize the answers we've gotten so far are not ideal, and we don't by any means mean to stop where we are. But, if we were to not be careful about how we did this and just said, before typically the way a condition works is before you get your clearance to begin operation, you have to do the following 6 things before you open. If one of those was, seed the site to such and such a plant community, and that's all we ever said, it's like, yep, you got the seeds in, you're done. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
5 or 10 years down the road, it's not going to be there anymore. So we need to come up with a way to mandate planting and management in a way that we know it could be successful. So we've got room to learn here. What else we got?
Yeah, I just want to add that at one of our meetings, there's the DCR had a whole, it was called Smart Solar, where they talked about like getting those the right plantings underneath. And I'm sure you're already aware of that, but it seems like there's an effort to grow that seed. And I was wondering, it's like, is there a happy medium where you can still engage these, rather than just saying, well, we're not able to do it now? Is there still a way to engage with them, to even have experimental plots, or to, not to just give up on it completely?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
also-
we're certainly not going to give up on it. Like I said, I don't know when we'll next get one of these.
But even for like the Rivanna
No.
Solar, it sounds like they're open. Like, is there a possibility to continue those communications with them?
Well,
And to
yeah.
encourage, even if it's an experimental plot, I mean, not that they have to do it over the whole 92 acres, but it seems worth at least, is it just like it's done?
Well, in terms of the development process, it's not done, but the period for setting those big picture requirements is done when the special use permit is done. Then there's the site development plan, which is much more of a checklist operation where they just have to show they're meeting the standard development regulations that apply to everything, basically. That doesn't mean nothing can be done, but it means that somebody has to dedicate somebody's staff time to work with them and the resources to do that. So it's going to be outside the realm of development review and into the realm of engagement and maybe, I don't know, maybe even this committee could be part of it. Or if the board were to dedicate part of somebody's work time to cooperative projects like that, that would be great. We're not there right now, but I'd like to see it happen.
I can certainly volunteer to do some research in this just initially to sort of get things going, maybe to find out if people are doing it elsewhere, what's worked for them, and just get to know some of the variables involved. I can get us started.
Yeah, that would be tremendously helpful if you would be willing to do that.
I also think that developers themselves should be tasked with this. Like, I just don't think this is something the county should have to take on. Abigail, that's awesome when we can use resources that we have that aren't staff resources. But if someone wants to build a project, this information is out there. They can go find it and make a proposal and, start the process. And then maybe a staff member has to verify it. But I don't
That
think
would
it's
be better.
necessarily the requirement that the staff become an expert on it. The developer should have to go, figure out how to make native plants work, other
Right.
vegetation, whatever it is, take that burden to where it's going to be on the property owner.
Agreed.
The question is one of incentive, though. I mean, they would have to see a
Permit
good
is
reason
the
to
incentive.
do that. Oh yeah, there you
The
go. There
permit.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd really be great to see more of that, I just feel like that's such a missed opportunity. I mean, I could see why it happened, but it feels unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't feel great. I mean, I worked on one of the two that where vegetation controls around the panels would have been relevant. And I don't feel great about not having succeeded in finding a way to make that work. But it's certainly not that we're just not, that we've put it aside and aren't going to try. I think we need some education.
Nice to see that about the outdoor lighting.
Right. Yeah. The lighting controls are pretty strict on these, that obviously we don't want rural facilities like this sitting out there lit just for no reason. Let's see, what else is of interest here?
And then also the planting for the screenings include minimum of 3 species. What does that mean?
That is
I mean,
that's probably not what you or I would want to see in terms of
No.
screening being entirely done with native forest vegetation or something like that. Typically, when we require on a development project a variety of species in the screening vegetation, it's because it makes it look a bit more natural. Well, we don't want to end up with a design where somebody just puts out a line of one species of tree and it just stands out from the landscape. It doesn't look like anything approaching a native group of vegetation. It's just obviously a tree fence. And it looks terrible. So trying to get around that by requiring some variation in the species that are used.
but does that mean?
Also,
Go ahead.
also, I might add, Scott, that a monoculture for screening, if a disease comes through, and this has happened a lot in tidewater, you'll see with Photinia and some other plants that were used predominantly for screening. If a disease comes through, they're all, they just get all wiped out.
Right. Then you've got
Having
nothing.
that, having that diversity helps mitigate that a bit.
And admittedly, that's all about visual screening and not about habitat value or anything like that. But that's what that's about.
So like the 80% native plant is not going to apply here.
Yeah, they didn't apply a condition like that on this one. I would hope we would in the future ones. I'd like to see us get into more detail than this. And also, the Midway was an odd site, and a lot of the area that's actually being disturbed was planted pine plantation that had, there was grazing around it. If I remember correctly, the pine plantation had never been thinned, so it was just a bunch of old pines that hadn't been taken care of, and it wasn't what you would call a forest. So it's kind of that weird in between of, it's not just a field, but it's not a hardwood forest. What is it? And what do we have to do in terms of both plant community improvements and water quality improvements based on the changeover from this odd vegetation type to what's going to be there?
Pine bark beetle is a good example with the pines that have really wreaked havoc in some areas around here.
Yeah.
I do think it's really great to come at this from the perspective of the company, though, like how diversification of species is beneficial for them in the long run. How having native species require less maintenance and less mowing and, better water runoff retention and all of these things. So I think that is a really good perspective that we can have, and Abigail, I'm excited to see some of the information you collect, and I'm excited to do some research into this too. To kind of I feel like we could just put something together that's really simple that we can give to the board or just share with the county in some capacity to just sort of bring attention to these points that we'd like to be seen.
And theoretically, at some point, I'm going to be coming up with some sort of solar facility review guidelines. That's not a regulation. That's not any kind of law. It's just information for my coworkers on, if you get assigned one of these, what should you look into? And having that information on better planting plans for these sites and better vegetation management would be really helpful to add into that. So that as we get more of these in the future, which I assume we will, we can do a better job on dealing with the land cover within the site.
Scott, it would be helpful, I think, to be able to see these documents, to see what is this called again that you're showing us? Is
These are the conditions of approval
Yeah.
For the special use permit for Midway Solar. So this is just the approval letter.
And is that public information?
Oh, yeah.
So would it be possible to share it with us? Because I think it helps, it kind of gives us a guideline of what has been asked for, and we can kind of look at it and think, oh, this would have been better with A, B, or C.
Yeah, and honestly, obviously, there's always room for improvement on how we do these things. But this is, I can send you all the conceptual plan, which is what sets out the design, and the letter with the conditions that sets out the limits on the use. That's a common structure for any special use permit approval, no matter what the use is. There's going to be a plan and there's going to be a set of conditions.
Thank you. It's a lot to just understand the process, and a big learning curve for us, you know, to understand all that goes into the whole process. And then,
Yeah,
you know,
and
a reminder that somebody's got to go out there and make sure what's agreed upon has been done. That's always the thing that you forget.
And, you know, we've had, you know, chances in the past to talk about things like development review process and things like that. And you can always do that again if you all are interested. I realize it's all kind of arcane and bizarre, but it is helpful to understand if you're going to dive into, you know, proposing regulations and things like that, which is something this committee has done before and other committees have done, is just helping staff draft regulations or making regulation recommendations to the board. So it's just helpful to understand how the process works and what some of the founding legal problems or legal issues are with how you regulate land uses.
Yeah, I think that Lonnie, I just pulled up a recommendation that he had made on the solar sites, but I will pull all that together so everybody can see sort of the history of what we've discussed about that as well. Well, thank you so much for always a great education to have you here with us.
I'm sorry if I kind of rambled on too long there, but
No,
It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
It was really informative, and just a great lens into how these things work. All right, you guys. So we're going to move on to our working groups. The education and outreach group met just prior to this meeting, and what is some exciting news that we have? I would love it if maybe, well, I can give you a little bit of an update about Dardentow. And some really great news is that we've been talking a lot about conservation mowing in the county parks. And so I know in Dardentow, they're going to expand the area that they've set aside for conservation mowing to 6 acres, which is going to be great. And also there's an effort to identify more areas in some of our other parks. So I think that we'll see an expansion of that in all of our county parks. And then the Peabody School is working with the Center for Urban Habitats with Devin Floyd, and they had come up with a Piedmont Prairie Restoration Project for Dardentow. And so the students made a presentation. So yet to hear, it's going to take some funding to get that going, but it's exciting that there are these students that are interested in that. And they're sweet, 3 6th grade boys, and they are super committed to it. And really wonderful to see that. And thank you to Emma. I don't know if we all need to get on Instagram so we can see her wonderful Instagram post, right? So the April one, no, the May one, March one came out. We're gonna have to work on getting them out earlier in the month, but it looks like they're coming out a little later in the month. But she's got a great lineup. Has anybody seen them come out? Instagram? Okay, Bruce saw them. We got to get us all on Instagram so we can repost them. And
Albemarle County Instagram. Yeah.
Emma, can you send the link out to all of us?
Yeah, of
Make
course.
it easier. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be fantastic.
I will, and you can follow them if you don't follow them.
Sure.
They don't have many followers, like generally. I don't think many people know to follow a county on social media. But yeah, it's
Can you just tell me right now and I'll find it?
I believe it's Albemarle County
Okay.
VA. Are you on Instagram, Peggy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see it. I got it. I'm going to follow it. I see it.
Great.
All right,
Yay.
fantastic.
There
So
you go. That's it, right? Is that what you're talking about?
That's not our post, but that looked like it.
Somebody posted. Oh yeah, share your story. What's the post?
Go back to,
go back.
one more.
Yeah, go to where you see them all.
Okay. Here they are.
It's the pink one.
The pink one.
Ah. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. March tip up for the month for birth. Oh, that's beautiful. I'm gonna like it. I'm a liker.
Good. You can like them all.
I do. I like everything.
All right, fantastic. So
Good. Nice.
And you can share it. You can like it and you can share it so that the people that you follow can also read the tip of the month and get excited about connecting with the natural world around them.
I can never figure out how to share Instagram though. I can share Facebook. Oh, here, share to what?
Share to your story.
Okay. Oh well. Okay. I'll do that. No.
I can do a little tutorial one day.
Yeah. I can share. Okay, never mind. I know how to share to my story, but I just can't share it as a. I just did it. All right, it's shared.
all right, fantastic. All right. Okay, we all need to get on there and really be promoting these because they're just really great posts and it's really getting our message out there. So thank you, Emma, for that. And Emma has got our conservation mowing signs in Spanish and in English, and also a really wonderful, just like no mow simplified sign. So she's been doing some great work with that. And Emma, do you want to just, we got the Pollinator Festival, the Earth Day Festival down in Scottsville. So give a plug for that.
Yeah, sure. So Scottsville Center for Arts and Nature, SCAN, which is a pretty new nonprofit running out of Scottsville, they're hosting an Earth Day event that is running starting next weekend, but the main event will be the weekend of Earth Day, the 23rd. That Saturday will be the main event, and they're going to have a pretty big lineup of events like recycling workshops and clothing swaps and land cleanups and hikes and all that kind of stuff. And we are hoping to be able to represent Natural Heritage Committee in a similar way than we did at the Pollinator Festival in Scottsville, with a table and information. And so, yeah, if you're curious about joining, I'll also send out the schedule of events so you can connect with that information. But the Rivanna River Fest is also, I just noticed that they're connected actually. So on the Rivanna River Fest is happening, I think the weekend after, but they've connected their schedules so you can see the SCAN information and the events on the Rivanna River Fest, and SCAN is sharing theirs. So it's kind of cool to see like Charlottesville and Scottsville coordinating on a really fun community project.
Also, I might add that May 1st will be, we're starting the the Art Festival again, the River Art Festival. We've had to postpone that for 2 years now, and I'm pretty excited about that. There'll be a lot of painters and artists all along the river. And that's sort of tied in with the Rivanna River Festival too.
That's it's the same day, right?
Yeah, May 1st. Rivanna Conservation Group will be involved, but it's being hosted by the Lewis and Clark Center. So it'll be at Dardentown Park, and probably all along the river. Decorate your boat.
What day is Earth Day? Tell me again. Is it April 23rd?
I'm not sure.
The Scottsville.
Yeah, it's the 23rd, right?
Earth Day is the 22nd.
22nd.
The event in Scottsville is the 23rd, that Saturday.
The 23rd is also the plant sale at Tufton Farm. Just letting you
Wow.
know. Competition. Okay. Oh yeah, Earth Day. Here it is. All day.
Everyone's sitting outside.
And yeah, you can do both. It's just on your way. Yeah.
All right, wonderful. And then I also just wanted, I don't know if Bruce, you wanted to just share, Bruce has been doing some thinking about a way of expanding our education efforts. And Bruce, would you like to share just like a little snippet of what you were thinking?
Yeah, I just wanted to, since the BAP action plan, one of the main parts of it is education. And we seem to be educating mostly to adults. And I felt like that was a missed opportunity, that we should also try to educate children, because they're going to become the adults, and the more that they care about it, the more likely, the easier it will be to convince them when they're landowners and taxpayers. Also, it's just that important. So it's on the rolling plan now, officially, and I set that up as my task. So I'm looking forward to it. So we just started 2 days ago, maybe. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and really excited that you are taking that on, Bruce. And I think that I just wanted to, I gave a talk to the Whitehall Ruritans with the mask. They are considering putting in, re-landscaping their community center with native plants. And so gave a talk about the BAP and Natural Heritage Committee and just the native plant campaign, and put those together. And I just want to say that there's Plant Piedmont Northern Native campaign, where there's an effort with the Piedmont Master Gardeners is to sticker all the locally native plants at the garden centers. And it sounds like those native plants have really been flying off the shelves. So I think that that is a good sign. And so hopefully that will continue to be the case. I'm going to hand it over to, wildlife corridors. Leah's not here, but I hope everybody got a chance to hear her great interview. And I thought that was really exciting that that she was out there and able to get that to a bigger audience with that NPR article. And the policy, I don't know, Kate, well, you guys, I don't think we're able to meet, right? The policy group. No.
No, it just doesn't work very well with the hurdles in place.
Yeah, exactly. So before we close up, I'm a little bit torn, thinking that, do we need to communicate with the board again as a committee about the synthetic turf or the ACE program, and wondering what people's thoughts are about that, or we leave it to individuals?
I think individuals is always a fabulous idea, even if it means people talk amongst group members or with each other or with individuals about ideas or share edits or any of that stuff. Just because we are more voices than just the committee, and each have a different perspective on all these things, ACE and turf and all the other items. But I'm certainly glad to help with anybody who wants to have information about the things that I have been looking into for years.
And I just want to say that it doesn't have to, the communication doesn't have to be long either. I think it's just a matter of like speaking from one's heart about how you feel about, from our perspective. And I think it's fine also to remind your representative that you are acting as a volunteer citizen advisor, and you're volunteering your time on the Natural Heritage Committee. And these are things that you care about, so.
And sorry, one thing I'll just mention too is, it's really helpful for us on staff, for the board to hear from the committee as a whole. But another thing that people often don't take advantage of is the chance to go, especially now that we're back in person, is to go to the board meetings and either speak on something that's on the agenda, or there's a time dedicated in the evening to items that aren't on the agenda. Or if there's something that's important to you, you can address the board directly in person in a public way. And that's can sometimes be really, really more effective than just a letter. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's something that the board pays attention to when they look out in the audience and see who's shown up. That's a big deal, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, because I think it can be powerful. And it takes a little bit of nerve from us people who are a little shy about doing stuff like that, but good way to grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I can do it, and maybe I don't do it so well, but if I can do it, anybody can. So have at it.
Scott, you're a pro. It's fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely.
You may not have seen me stumbling over my own tongue up there at the podium, but
I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, hats off to those of you who have to get up there and do that. Oh my goodness. Well, the other thing that I also wanted to remind everybody is, in our last meeting, I created a document that Kim said that she would welcome the feedback about policies, sustainability policies related to just overall, right? Maintenance of the parks and whatnot. And so I can resend those links. So I just went ahead and it was a brainstorm. So if you have to look at that document, and please add some things there if you can think of them, or if you look at the list, you think, oh, well, maybe we should add this and this. And then in addition to that, I started a document, and I just focused on about the county parks. And we were going to talk about identifying areas that where there are some invasive species, or that there are some pristine areas where those invasives have not invaded yet, and that there's an opportunity to protect those areas. So when you're out walking in the county parks, and you can make those observations and then add it to that document, so that we've got these observations. I hope that made sense, what I just said.
Yeah.
But I know that was sort of around and around in circles, but I will resend those docs, and I hope that you will add to that. I think hopefully that will be helpful. And the last thing that we are charged with tonight is to look at the BAP goal number 1. And we started that conversation last time we met, and I almost feel even a little bit hesitant to start it right now with 10 minutes left. I don't know. How are people feeling? Do you want to dive into that, or we could just call it a night and save it for May? I'd say we save it for May. What do you guys say?
Let's start May out with that one. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds like a great idea.
it's been a long week.
It's been a long week.
April is a busy month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. I love that decision. We're going to save it for May. And I want to thank everybody. I don't know if anybody else has something that they want to add before we close up.
Well, I'm going to try to make it out to see the eagle nest out at Tufton. I've been meaning to do that. The problem is, you know, I used to go out there with my dog, and now she's gotten so old and arthritic, she can't do it. And so now I have to go by myself, and it just makes me sad. But I'll try to get out there. It's a not an easy hike to get to the location, but I'll try to do it once it dries out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, invite one of us along.
Yeah, I will. I'll invite you. You and I can go together.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Be fun. Okay.
All right. Well, I hope maybe we'll see you at one of these Earth Day events. And you know what? If anybody decides they're going to go to the board meeting and speak, let me know. I'll join you, and you know, maybe we'll feel more confidence if we do it together. So,
what's the date again on the board meeting?
Well, there's always, you know, we can always go at any point, right? And speak up. So,
all right. So
yeah,
I'll do it.
All right. Fantastic. All right, you guys. Happy April. It's great seeing all of you, and look forward to seeing you again in May, if not before then. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Good
Scott.
seeing you
Thank
all.
you, Carolyn.
Thanks, Scott.
All right.
Yeah, later. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.